Sports Publicity, How the Game Has Changed for Athletes and Events. This session examines the evolving landscape of personal branding and entrepreneurship in the world of sports and entertainment. Panelists will provide insights on how to take advantage of the changing game and succeed in today's competitive landscape and to control the narrative of one's public self. Moderating this session is Kara Hawkins-Jedlicka, a scholarly assistant professor at Murrow College with more than a decade's worth of experience as a content producer and strategic communicator. She specializes in digital strategy with an emphasis in social media and online communities. She teaches courses in integrated communication, writing for public relations, digital marketing campaigns, brand and consumer insights, employee communication, and advertising. She is the co-founder of the Oral History podcast, Starting Line 1928, which documents the lived experiences of pioneers in women's distance running. Most recently, she published a paper which explores the use of personal branding of collegiate swimmers and track and field athletes in the first season of Name, Image, and Likeness. Please welcome Kara Hawkins-Jedlicka.
So welcome, as the video intro said, and I'll say my name, very long name yet again. I am Kara Hawkins-Jedlicka, a scholarly assistant professor of strategic communication at the Murrow College of Communication. As I look out into this lovely group of people, I know most of you, you have probably had me in 312. So it's good to see a lot of familiar faces. I'm very honored to moderate this panel today, Sports Publicity and How the Game Has Changed for Athletes and Events. So I'm going to begin today's session by introducing each of the panelists. We're going to continue with a series of questions. Each panelist gets one question in their specialty, and then others can chime in. I am going to have hopefully about 15 to 20 minutes at the end for Q&A. So just kind of hold questions till the end, and we will go from there. I do feel like I kind of need a whistle or a starting pistol to get started, so let's just kind of roll into the communications. In the introductions. So first, Bridget Ryken is a current Murrow student, and you likely know her as number 11 for the WSU women's soccer team. She has won numerous Pac-12 honors, Defensive Player of the Week in 2021, third team all-conference, and some of those honors include Pac-12 Academic Honor Roll. She will be graduating this fall and would be a great addition to any PR advertising team. So if you are hiring, Bridget is awesome. And sorry, I do not have a Matt Lovelace voice. I do not quite get the intro there, but we are good. Dale Prose is currently sports play-by-play and sports director at KOSW FM Ocean Shores. His involvement in sports media is varied and long. He has worked in various small market radio sports, was a video director at Kingdom. Oh, yeah, okay. And he's been a freelancer at both the Goodwill Games and the Atlanta Olympics, and a senior video producer at the Boeing Company. He graduated from the WSU School of Communications and was probably the last class to graduate in black and white. Timothy Bryson is the director of athletic education and compliance at, you're gonna have to correct me on this, is it Mogul? Okay, I had it right, okay, at Mogul. He is a Black millennial educator with a demonstrated history of working in higher education industry. He's a former Division I college athlete and a certified athletic trainer with experiences across several disciplines in college athletics and student affairs. He is currently pursuing his PhD in the Student Affairs program at the University of Maryland, College Park. And last, but certainly not least, Jason Crump is currently communications director / writer for the Cougar Athletic Fund, but has seen it all with his nearly 25 years of experience in collegiate athletics, with 22 of those years being at WSU. He is a Murrow alum and was a sports writer for the Daily Evergreen. His work in sports includes the Continental Basketball Association, the Yakima Sun Kings, they're now defunct. He worked at Eastern Washington University in media relations at the PGA Championships, Ryder Cup, the 2015 US Open at Chambers Bay, Washington, and the Kentucky Derby, which is really interesting to think about media relations when it's both the rider and the horse. So,
it was interesting.
Yeah, it's a whole thing because you got basically two athletes, plus anything can go wrong with animals, because you never want to add animals into anything.
Horses can be temperamental, that's
Yeah.
for sure.
So I'm actually going to field the first question to you, Jason. You have been working in college athletics for nearly 25 years. From an insider's perspective, what are the biggest changes in collegiate sports publicity in the last 5 years?
Thank you, and first of all, I just want to say how appreciative to be back with my fellow Murrow Cougs. Has brought back a lot of memories. I just realized it's going to be 30 years this May when I graduated from here, so it's hard to believe. And working at the Evergreen, you get memories flooding back, and one in particular, I wrote a column called Upon Further Review. There were hot takes before it was hot take. If you look at the library archives, I had a full head of hair back then, so that was one change. But one of my columns was I predicted Buffalo to beat Dallas in the Super Bowl, and the end result was Dallas beating Buffalo 52-17. So my prognostication career ended before it began. But to be back, the experiences and my career that I've been fortunate to have has been traced back to the education I received at Murrow. So I just want to express my gratitude to be back here and hopefully relay my experiences and hopefully learn something from that. The big change that's come about, well, as a grad assistant at Eastern, I remember we were in the sports information department. We were stuffing envelopes with the weekly news releases to snail mail out. This is back in 1998, 99. And then I've had a lot of duties here, and one in 2009, I was the website coordinator for WSUCougars.com, and part of that was not only update and maintain the website, but how can we bring people to the website. So I thought, 2009, and so remember, there's this new thing called Twitter. This might be a good way to draw people to our website. You know, you could post something, put the link in, and Facebook too. So I'll start an athletics Twitter and Facebook account, and actually the Twitter handle I made was WSUCougars_com, because let's brand the website. And now 15 years later, social media is the way it's exploded. It's really the primary way people have received their information through your phone, mobile device, and so that's the big thing, and that I have seen is just the way people access and gather information via social media.
Daryl, you have also witnessed these changes but from a little bit different perspective.
Yeah, I think as a student you need to be aware of what I call disruptive forces that occur, and you need to be aware of that. When I graduated from WSU, like I said, I was the last class to graduate in black and white. So we had black and white cameras in there. It took 2 of us to lug a camera up from where the bus parked by Martin Stadium up to the press box. And we had to stop once and take a break, and then we came back down. We made another trip up, one of us carrying the lens and the other carrying the tripod. So it was heavy stuff. And I went to the baseball game yesterday, the day before yesterday, and I saw the little baby cameras that you guys use. I'm going, now, wouldn't that be enough? So when I graduated, there was no internet, there was no email, there's none of this stuff. But yet, I looked at things, and this disruptive force thing that I saw, in fact, when I would come to school, I would have to make a collect person-to-person, long-distance phone call to my parents to say, yeah, I made it safe to Pullman over the pass from McClary, dinky little town. And so one day I'm working for the Boeing company, and we're going to do this project, and we're going to have some video going to the employees in a hotel, a convention center. Well, I needed to test these things out, and I really couldn't do it by logging into the company twice, so I did it from home because I got the time. So I'm messing around, and I finally got it to work, and about 9 o'clock at night, and I find, well, I need to have someone look at it now because I could only log on to one computer. So I contacted a secretary, and she goes, oh yeah, I'll watch it for you. So then I set this camera up, and I'm sitting on the couch eating a sandwich and just having a good time, and I forgot about it. So it turns out I got back on again, and she laughed and laughed and laughed. So yeah, this is like watching reality TV, watching you sit on the couch watching TV and laughing. Well, she was in Australia. So I sent color, live television and sound for free from my house to Australia. And to me, that was that thing that to me just jumped out and said, look how things have changed. And so I grabbed onto stuff, and I developed webcasting for the Boeing company when it was an itty-bitty little mom and pop company, and then it turned into an international thing. They sent me all over the world to do stuff. But that's the thing that you guys need to be aware of. You never stop learning and looking at things that's out there. What's this disruptive force that you're seeing as you develop your career, and how can you grab onto it and then go from there?
Well, I guess speaking of disruptive forces, Tim, social media has both really kind of made the fandom bigger because you're able to find information easier, right? You can find the sports that you want to follow. Anybody who's had me knows I like Olympic sports, so it's like easy for me to find my like little running news when I need to because of social media. But it's also made it smaller because it has grown and it feels more personal. And fans are able to really be more involved with athletes. So starting, and if you guys don't know this date, I feel like I say this date all the time, starting July 1st, 2021, all NCAA D1, D2, and D3 student athletes are just collegiate athletes, can be compensated for their use of name, image, and likeness. At Mogul, you're working with universities and colleges across the country. You will be working with WSU. No, that's why you're mostly here today. Can you talk a little bit about what trends you're seeing in the NIL marketplace, and then particularly kind of talk about the differences you're maybe seeing between genders and between sports?
Yeah, so it's huge, and thank y'all for being here. I took 2 3-hour flights to be here from DC. Y'all look a little too sad for me right now, so I need y'all at least smile a little bit, because it was a very long day yesterday. But nevertheless, as Kara mentioned, I work in the NIL space as an educator, and I've been privileged to go to several schools across the U.S. Most recently, Rose College in Memphis, a private liberal arts, Division III. I went on to State College, went on to State University and went on to Minnesota. There's nothing there except the Mississippi River, but beautiful campus, Division II. But everywhere I go, right, even speaking with Washington State athletes later today, the question really becomes, I don't think NIL is for me. Because given social media, right, that we've seen it become smaller, everyone's seeing what's being posted on, whether it's ESPN or another social media website, and only seeing the top 1%, if that, bringing in 5-figure deals. I think the misconception with NIL is that it's bigger than, that it's only 5-figure deals, and there's so much more than that. Really starting with the daily uses that you use in your everyday, whether that be haircuts, pencils, pens, water bottles, et cetera, and really targeting a local approach to NIL. But I think, too, thinking about Washington State in particular in this position on the West Coast, there will be athletes here, right, at a Power 5 Division I institution, Research 1 institution, who still do not believe NIL is for them, not because of the logo on their jersey, right, but because we're in Pullman, Washington. It's a misconception, right? And so I think as we think about, yes, social media has made it smaller, I think the focus of NIL has become focused on followership, a focus on popularity, a focus on our value on Instagram or Twitter, and that's all incomplete statistics and evaluations of what NIL has meant. And I honestly believe we need to pivot using y'all's help as those in the communication school especially, to pivot conversation on NIL and community building, right? How do you build community on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok with your fans in a way that can lend itself to NIL deals, whether that be monetization, career development, or other forms of alumni engagement. But I think the second thing we need to also focus on is thinking about, as us as fans, but also students, scholars, et cetera, what is our role in helping to empower and equip all NIL athletes to participate in NIL? So I think Kiara mentioned the conversation around men and women athletes and men's sports and women's sports athletes. I think we've seen this last weekend, praise God, that the Iowa LSU game obviously had extraordinary and historic numbers and ratings, given that just the magnitude of that game. Women's sports is not coming, it's here, right? We cannot continue to ignore the trends, I think, as you mentioned before, the disruptive forces that are happening right now. I think too often in sports, it's a copycat industry in which we wait for other people to move. But I think the people in this room need to move first. And so identify, to your point, the disruptive forces and get ahead of it by identifying what rings true to you and how you can get ahead of the curve to help others along the way.
Tim, I'm going to follow up with you just because something kind of came to my brain. So I don't know if anybody in this room yesterday, I sat through a very good panel on kind of purpose-driven public relations. So when we're talking about name, image, and likeness, and you hit on this kind of community building, are you seeing a lot of athletes kind of pursue that purposeful kind of promotion with their name, image, and likeness?
Short answer, no. I mean, I think that's the point, right? I think there's too many people in the college sports space, and honestly the higher education space, who are trying to teach NIL to athletes who don't know who they are. And you can't leverage your NIL if you don't know who you are. If you don't know your name, your image, your likeness, how do you monetize that? So, right, like, how do you do that? And I think the focus of NIL, particularly the last 2 years, and I would love for my friend to speak on this as a current athlete as well, has been on money, it's been on greed, right? It's been on really trying to get ahead and being first movers in space as opposed to centering purpose in what we do from an education standpoint, a compliance standpoint, and how we connect athletes to brand deals. I would again love to talk more about that, but I would love to hear your perspective as a current athlete as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just get themselves into a deal and they don't necessarily know how it's gonna like be perceived. So I think knowing exactly what your brand is before you get into an NIL deal is huge.
So Bridget, you've witnessed a lot of changes during your time here at WSU. You witnessed a change firsthand with NIL. You probably did not pick WSU with the thought of name, image, and likeness when you came in here. You thought, hey, they are, well, I don't even know if we were a soccer powerhouse at the time, but we are going to be a big player and it's a Pac-12 school, right? You probably also thought, hey, Murrow Communications is awesome. At least I hope you did. So as a women athlete, as a Division I athlete, as a senior who's been here, what recommendations would you have for those who are promoting collegiate athletes broadly? Also, you know, if you want to go smaller with NIL. And then what could marketers and sports information departments be doing better to support athletes, especially women athletes? We saw huge numbers this weekend. I think we all know we saw ridiculous numbers this weekend. I told people I'm going to be just absolutely insufferable about women's sports for like the next 3 weeks at least because, God, those games were so good. So Bridget, I'm going to let you just go ahead and answer that question.
Yeah, kind of going off of the purpose that we just talked about, I think that for companies to like find the right fit, you need to find somebody that like can promote the brand and target the correct audience with the followers that they have. And I also think that companies need to be creative with the people that they use. Like I know Arby's used, I think it was running backs, and I thought that that got like a ton of engagement because it was creative and they used the right people. I also just think that in order to help like women, we also have to educate the companies as well. I feel like we focus just on the athletes, but I know that a couple local companies came to one of our events and they just genuinely wanted to know how it worked. And they were looking to use female athletes, but they hadn't been educated on it. So I think just creativity, just giving education to other people other than athletes is gonna change for us.
Do you guys want to jump in on those too?
Well, I'd just add, you mentioned never stop learning, and this is a good learning for me too, with just how NIL is so new. I was talking to Bridget before this, and it seems like college athletics, I've worked 25 years, but it's changed more in the last 2 years than the 23 previous. And who knows next year at this time and then down the line how it's gonna evolve. But the charge I feel I have, and we in the athletic department and external, is as a writer, is to tell the stories of our student athletes and portray that, whether it's for me writing those stories or through our video and all that, and portray that and use our social media, our website, our communication vehicles to do that.
I think that real quick to add, I think never stop learning, but be interdisciplinary learners, right? My undergrad's in athletic training, my grad and doc is in student affairs. I guess I've been adopted into this communications journalism field, and I'm glad to be here. But the point, and to my friend that just made earlier, is that there are too many people in the NIL space in particular who are in marketing and communications, fundraising, corporate, and they don't know anything about education. So if you want to work in college sport or professional sports for that matter, or want to work in athlete marketing, I would strongly, strongly, strongly encourage us to be interdisciplinary in our work, interdisciplinary in our knowledge of not just US sport, but global sports, and what my friend said as well about the Australia piece, because sport is globalizing quick in many ways. And for us to continue to stay in our own industry lanes or disciplinary lanes, it's not gonna work, right? It's not gonna work, we'll be siloed, and it does not lend itself to creating a more equitable and socially just future for college sport.
I think that's a great answer. Also, I should have a personal branding class. you guys want to take it. It is a 275, so please sign up. It's also happening this summer, but I need that too. I'm gonna do one more question before I hand it over to y'all. So for any of you or all of you, we really heard about social media fandom becoming a little bit more personal, or feeling personal, right? And you've all experienced it in different ways. Daryl, you really built kind of quite an infrastructure, but I know you have a ton of experience working in smaller markets and building kind of a fandom around yourself. So all of you know the importance of building fandom and audience and leveraging it. What is the best advice do you have to kind of build this fandom or this audience around what you produce?
Again, it goes back to this disruptive forces, but for me, we had a radio show for a couple of years before the pandemic started called Wazoo Nation. And so it was small market radio in Ocean Shores, and the radio station hardly got off the peninsula, but it had a streaming component. So I jumped onto it because of the streaming part. I didn't care about the people in Ocean Shores, but I wanted to hit all the cougs around the country. So I got the website called wazoonation.com. And then we streamed it out, and then we were able to advertise on our stream, and we selected local advertisers that wanted to reach out outside of Ocean Shores to bring them in, so when they came there, they could stay at their hotel or eat at their restaurant. So it's looking about, again, what's changing out there for you and how you can take advantage of it. Yeah. And if you're a student athlete, I used to work for the Seahawks, and we would see the new recruits coming in, you know, the people that were draftees, and they're playing for the team, and off they go. And then one day, especially during preseason, there's some brutal cuts that go on. If you think this industry is brutal in television and in radio, it's really tough in sports. Mm-hmm. So have a second good plan B, because the first time some of these athletes had ever been cut from a team was from the Seahawks. So they were high school, you know, really doing well in high school, really doing well in college. You know, they jump on the bus, you take your toothbrush and your personal items with you, and everything else is packed up for you. They tell you where to go to the room, go catch this flight. They would get cut from the Seahawks, and they didn't know how to get home. They didn't know how to buy a plane ticket. So it was really sad to see this happen. And some of them had no plan B. So you need to get that plan B here at Washington State, because this is a great communication school. I would say I am your goal. I stayed in television my entire career and retired out of it. So small market radio and TV, corporate stuff, sports things. I worked 20 years as a second job at the Kingdome, directing all of the coverage on the big screen. So the first 300 baseball games was a lot of fun, and after that it got to be a job.
I can imagine.
I would just echo that. A small example engagement with Cougar Athletic Fund, we raise money for athletic scholarships. It's social media, but if all I put was posts about, hey, you know, about donations and all that, nobody's going to follow that. I started our CAF Cougar Athletic Fund Instagram, and the way to build followers is to draw on the passion Cougars have for WSU. Post a photo of campus on a soon-to-be warm spring day, which I know is coming at some point, or summer day, or landmarks that people engage with and like, and you build that followers. So now we got about 6,000 followers to the Instagram page, and then every once in a while we'll post something if we have a campaign going on. And I'll also echo in terms of diversifying your skills. I graduated with a journalism emphasis, communication, business minor, writing, but I was able to get my gig at the Kentucky Derby because I knew PageMaker. I learned it through grad school, and now it's InDesign. I don't think PageMaker exists anymore. It's 20 years ago, but I learned how to use that, and they needed someone to lay out the notes. They had a notes team that go out every morning and all the Derby contenders, and they talk to the trainers, and then they basically reporters, and they write the notes, but they need someone to lay it out into formatted PageMaker file that then they would give to the media, and that's how I knew PageMaker, and that's how I was able to be able to work at the Derby, because I knew that skill. So the more skills you have, the more opportunities you're going to present for yourself.
All right, so I will throw this to the audience. I see Becky right behind me first.
So how or what have you planned for our international students when it comes to NIL, and whether or not they're going to be fit into the mix? Because right now they're outcasts, and partially due to the ridiculous method of collecting for them.
It's a planet question.
I know, I thought it was.
Oh, the question is,
No, Tim's got this.
Yeah, it's my lane. It's my
This
PhD
is
research.
Tim's specialty. He actually has a whole conference coming up about international athletes and NIL. So no, I did not plant this. But yeah,
So record this for
sounds
the
like
DC
you.
defense.
Yeah, you're good.
it's because of my relationship with a former student athlete here who got nothing because there was no way to physically go collect the money.
Yep. So a couple of things. I think Washington State's obviously position in international athlete recruitment is historic, given y'all were one of the first, if not the first, school in the NCAA to have international athletes. Actually, track and field and cross country. That's a fun fact. But to your point, I think the concern is that at no stage of the decision-making process of NIL, international athletes were considered. I think where we are now, understanding that with the new NCAA president, Charlie Baker, looking for Congress's help, which was definitely in futile last week, we need more support, advocacy, and voice from y'all and us and our athletic departments and our state legislators talking about this issue, because it cannot just be my friend in the back who just asked the question, myself, and others who are affected by this personally, to really cause dramatic change. I think too, at least in this current state, we've seen some examples of where international athletes have gotten a P1 or O visa to monetize their NIL while on U.S. soil. But for those international athletes who are on an F1, they can monetize in non-U.S. countries, to which I think all of us understand at this point. However, until we get, again, dramatic change, I think where we position NIL for international athletes is really focused on career development. So for those who want to stay in the U.S., how do we help them leverage their NIL through the CPT, OPT, and H-1B process towards their green card pursuit? For those that want to return home to their home country or third country, how do we help them leverage their NIL to help express, explain, and help employers in those non-U.S. countries understand what the NCAA model is? Because to our point as just U.S., students, faculty, and staff in the U.S. currently, the NCAA, though it's global, people don't know what it is and how it works. And so when you have an Australian athlete or a French athlete or an Italian athlete or a Thai athlete who goes back home with nothing on their resume and they're saying, I was a Division I athlete, that means nothing. It means nothing. So to that point, I think where we focus is career development. I think we in this room need to be more loud on social platforms, particularly with our athletic director and state legislators. But then 3, understanding where and how sport is globalizing, particularly with the NFL, NBA, and WNBA hosting both preseason and regular season games in these countries and continents.
So a lot of the conversation surrounding NIL is currently with men's basketball and football, and it's the pay-for-play scandals, all that stuff. But I think we're missing an untapped market with like the Olympic sports and all the other smaller sports. What do you think the future of NIL is for sports, not men's basketball, not women's basketball, but football, the smaller sports that don't get as much attention, be just an untapped market that could grow exponentially?
I have a whole paper. I will send it to you, but I will let you guys answer on the panel.
I'll jump in quick and we'll love y'all's thoughts as well. But I think most immediately, I think it's how we talk about it. So the language, right? So us being more mindful of the language we use to talk about NIL. So not focusing on basketball or football first, but focusing on the Olympic sports. I think too, where we're seeing NIL go even right now is athletes who are graduating from institutions who are NIL athletes are starting their own academies or their training sessions and doing NIL education for either their current athlete peers and or prospective athletes coming into school. But I think 3, we're going to see a lot more athletes beginning to take ownership of their own NIL, of their learning, of their purpose journey, and reaching out to brands directly. Because to this point, I think, again, the assumption is that for a lot of athletes that brands are going to come directly to you to give you a deal. That's very rare. And if so, they're going through agents. And so I think the quicker we see athletes take ownership, believe in themselves, and build a brand that they can then leverage with employers, whether in organizations through Instagram, LinkedIn, and other forms of communication. It'll be athlete to brand directly and not athlete to marketplace, or not athlete to agent, but athlete to brands, to which they then create opportunities for themselves, regardless of the sport, that reflect who they are, but also where they're going as well.
I also want to add to that. I think that if brands give smaller sports a chance, it's going to allow those athletes to build up their brand bigger. So all those smaller sports need is just a couple chances and just prove to people that they can build their brand.
And I'll actually point out, because I have these stats running through my head constantly, women's athletics is actually has more brand deals, technically, or having more brand deals than any of the men's athletics. Men are making more, women are actually having more deals. So we do see it a little bit there. And also, I want to say the top, well, I haven't seen it recently because of basketball. I don't know what the deals look like currently. But gymnastics and track and field actually had the highest number of deals Olympic sport-wise. And it's going to be really interesting to see how gymnastics plays out going into the Olympics.
So I actually have two questions, because Walker back there sparked a question. So first, Bridget, I talked with Sherman Neal 2 years ago now, in the first year of NIL, and in our conversation interview, he said that you guys on the soccer team are the ones who are taking advantage of NIL the most. You guys were the ones who were going out there and getting the most deals. So I just want to know, what were those conversations like at the start of NIL? What prompted you guys to be like, hey, this is our chance, let's make the most of it? And then also I want to know, since this is a communications seminar, from the student athlete standpoint and from your standpoint as well, what can us as communication students do to help these athletes get NIL deals? How do we help them build their brands and help get more NIL money?
Well, first of all, I didn't know that, so that's a fun fact. I think that we were educated very heavily when NIL got brought in, and we have so many resources on campus to ask questions, and we also have resources to help us find deals. I think right now, Icon Source is what we use. Oh, okay, sorry. But we're switching. So we've always had a resource that it's kind of like an app. We can go on there, see what deals are offered. If we have any questions, we can always go ask somebody. So I think that that's been beneficial for us.
Yeah, and then again, the assumption is that athletes want to participate in NIL monetization. And not the 480,000 athletes in the NCAA want to do that, right? I think for y'all and us in the room, I think everyone following the football page, Washington State football page, everyone following Washington State women's soccer. Yeah. Oh, you said women's basketball, right? So one, just following accounts that are not football, basketball. To your question earlier, but then two, again, y'all have platforms. I mean, for those who are in the communication school, if y'all don't have a personal brand outside of Washington State or the employer you're working for, start to build one. And through that platform, begin to share content that these athletes are sharing in the Olympic sports. Again, understanding, to your point, the Olympics coming up in 26, the World Cup in 28, which we'll see more Olympic sports be highlighted on a global, or the most global scene.
We've got time. Okay. We'll go here, and then I'll get you here. Hi, friend.
Hi. You guys were talking earlier about athletes not having a plan B after either they get cut from a team, or let's say even college athletes get their scholarship revoked or something like that. I'm wondering how, as communications people, how can we influence a change in that, influence plan B being more encouraged for athletes, and having these sports institutions be more set up to allow these athletes to fail, and if they do lose their ability to play, to still be able to have a successful life, if you know what I mean. How could we influence that?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I just can't, before Mogo, I was the athlete career development director at Maryland College Park. I think, again, language is important. And I think everyone points to the media for everything negative. I think we have opportunity to own and pivot that narrative. So one, rather than plan B, a parallel plan would be important. Or a purpose journey would be important. How do you leverage your sport for career after competition? Not after sport, because people can work in sport, but after competition. But then two, really focusing on storytelling of athletes who are pursuing grad school or who have internships or med school, et cetera. And sharing those stories through whether it's blogging, podcasts, et cetera. But I think, especially for the undergraduate and graduate communication students in the room, getting close with the Washington State athletes who are currently playing and alum, because as we've seen with college and professional, well, definitely professional athletics on both men's and women's side, podcasting is huge right now. And so y'all have the skills. I wish I could run a camera, but y'all have the skills to host and to really produce athletes podcasts at Washington State. So I think it'd be a dope idea, I don't know, to interview whether it's the rowing team post-competition or women's soccer or another sport post game, and they're going directly to you for quotes, right, for intel, for anything else they want to share with you as a trusted source, as opposed to sharing it on another platform. Because again, I think the question earlier was about not just career development, but also helping athletes think about their NIL in other ways, and really helping athletes to identify, one, what they're good at, but then two, how they leverage what they're already good at and the gifts they have in avenues that are either related to sport and or unrelated to sport. Like, y'all have the power, the platform position to do so. But I think, again, we fall into this, like, I'm only a communications person, I'm only a journalist, I'm only this, and being more interdisciplinary in your skills and learning more about what you can do to help not just athletics at Washington State, but the college sport industry as a whole.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. Storytelling, there are no shortages, unlimited stories of our student athletes. And I no longer work in the sports information department, but our sports information department each has a staff member assigned to each sport. So if there's a story you'd like, contact that representative, and they'll be happy to set up an interview or any time in terms of coordinating that.
So if you're a student in communications here, the NIL is not just for athletes, it's for everyone else.
Exactly.
So if you can what they call develop your brand and get your name out there, whether it's to like Cable 8 Productions or YouTube or other transports, whatever that may be, then when it comes time, if you're not an athlete, to get a job, to get that first job, you've got something out there which is public, and maybe they've seen it over and over again, but you reference that in your contact with your potential employers so that they know they can go look at this stuff and see a number of things that you've done. It's not just a 2-minute reel, because if they like it, they'll keep going.
Hi, thank you for coming today. I was wondering how you guys nurture the athlete or the person that might not be as extroverted or the one that has the big smile and is well known on campus. How can you help them grow? Because there's a lot of people that, don't have support from home, they don't have money, they can't work, but they do need the deals and the exposure. So how would you nurture the person that could use the extra leg up?
Yeah. What do you need? I'll start with you.
Well, I think that's a phenomenal question. I think it is hard. Like, I've never had an NIL deal, so I kind of fit into that category a little bit, and it is hard to find the support. We have options and everything, but again, finding something that fits to your specific brand is very hard, and then having them want you back is difficult. So I think that's a good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. From a person used to work in sports information, but I still interact with our student athletes. It's about building relationships and building trust, getting to know these student athletes, and so they're comfortable with you. And then if interview comes about, and you can pitch that to them, and they trust you, and you build those relationships with them. For me personally, it's one of the most rewarding parts of my job to get to know our student athletes and learn about them and their stories, and then see them successful as they graduate and become successful in their careers.
The only thing I'll add is that when speaking with athletes, I think especially those who may not have had an NIL deal and or want to get involved, I think asking questions about NIL, like, do you want to make money, right? And or do you want visibility? Do you want a job, right? And how do we leverage that if all three or a combination of the three? I think, two, having to make a list of brands they're interested in, right? Getting a better understanding of what where their passions and interests lie outside of their jersey and their academic major. And then, telling them, again, language is important, right? Let's tag team this venture in a way that makes sense for us. So we can start by cold emailing and or sending DMs on Instagram. But again, we're gonna do it together so you have a sense of how you can do this on your own when I'm not either working here and or physically present. But then last but not least, right, again, I have a personal brand myself outside of Mogul, right? So I know I have over 20,000 followers on social media, I have my own podcast, et cetera. So leveraging my own personal brand and say, hey, look, I have an athlete interested in X, Y, and Z brand. Would love for brands to reach out to me and or so to speak more about what an opportunity looks like for this athlete at Washington State. So again, I think it's a huge opportunity for us in this room to, again, think about how we build and leverage our personal brand to amplify the stories of athletes without always leaning on the company or the organization that we work for.
Okay, we got 10 more minutes. Any other questions?
A more specific question for Mr. Prowse. When you mentioned your time at Ocean Shores while streaming on radio, I currently am the director of operations at KUGR. Over the years, we've been limited now to streaming mainly, and I've always looked at it negatively. But after you've mentioned that it does allow greater outreach, do you have a positive outlook on the future of radio based off of streaming? Almost poorly worded, sorry, but your view on streaming or in regards to radio.
Radio and TV and cable TV are dying. It's going to be streaming. I've got TuneIn on my car for free, and I can listen to Cougar anytime. I've taken Cougar and on our Facebook page, and I've shared your streams, especially on the sports play-by-play guys with the caption, here's some guys in training. And so I'm sharing this stuff on a regular basis, the basketball and football games. And I'm amazed that you guys get to go to the away games. I think that's just great. And I want to put it, I'm also on the board of the local public access TV channel, and I'm planning on pulling a bunch of Cable 8 productions and slapping it on our channel, just because it's content. I can stick it on there. So there's a bunch of ways that you guys can get stuff out. I made a series of fly fishing videos on is instructional. I wanted to find something that was timeless, and the bad thing was that my talent had a gold chain that looked ugly now, but I sold $50,000 worth of them, of these videotapes to Cabela's and Bass Pro Shops. So you got to be open to things, and what's the new disruptive thing that you can get your message out, and what is that message?
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, I see you. Any hands up over here? Were you not a hand? Okay, okay. Okay, well, if there are no questions from the audience, I actually will do just one wrap-up question because we have a little bit of time, and I want to use all of our time. So, for all of you, what would you like to see change about sports publicity, sports PR, or sports coverage in the next 5 years?
You know, you gave that, doing the prep, and I read that question, and I thought, and this might be, I'm an old man yelling at the cloud. I kind of miss the old days of what didn't change. Of you mentioned TV, radio, you know, it's going to streaming. I'm old enough to remember in the 80s, bowl game January 1st, and there were 3 bowl games on over-the-network TV, and it was great and everything. And now, you know, college football, it's all over the place and what you can watch. So I hope there's still, it might be naive to think that they'll still be over the air, but I'm not optimistic on that. Like Daryl said, it'll be going to streaming. It'll be interesting to see what 5 years from now it's going to be like.
I would echo that same thing. I went to a conference probably 10 years ago when HBO Go was first introduced, brand new thing. And one of the presenters had said, yeah, on the internet will be 80% video streaming in the next 10 years. I'm like, oh, geez, I can't really get Napster, you know, because it's all the phone line stuff. And it's going that way. And you guys have got a tremendous opportunity. So if you want to do play-by-play, I mean, we're covering the North Beach Hyaks. It's a 2B high school. You know, they've got 300 kids and the students. We cover all of their home and away games on football and all of their home and away games on basketball. And so it's on this itty bitty tiny little radio station, but it squirts out over the internet. And we've gotten comments back from grandparents that said, oh, we never get to hear our granddaughter play basketball. We do the men and women's basketball. And so we're doing all of this stuff. That wasn't available years ago. And so you guys you need to hone your skills, and you can go to small market radio or TV and learn how to do play-by-play. Learn it here. I first started doing stuff on KUGR, doing basketball and baseball. And so it's like, and I did camera work here. And those skills, you know, got me as employee number 73 in the Atlanta Olympics when there were like 5,000 employees. So I was one of the first guys hired, first crew, and I knew about it years ago. So before the Olympics started. So you just got to hone your skills, learn how to do play-by-play. Even if you're not at the game, you can take. We had one of the exercises here that Hugh Rundle taught us, and it was like a printout of all of the plays, and you had to make that sound like you were at the game, so you make up stuff. And you learn what to look for because you're painting a picture for a bunch of blind people on the radio. Anyway, so that's what's, you guys have just got so much opportunity. There's so many different ways, different transports, and so many different sports that you can cover if you're looking at doing sports communications.
Yeah, I would say probably a lot more athlete-generated content, but really more focused on millennial and Gen Z generated content. I think at least for me, not being in this space, not growing up in this space, while I'm very emphatic about why I'm a millennial, is because the work that I get to do now at Mogul and I did at Maryland and everywhere else, I learned through Twitter, through Instagram, through podcasting, et cetera. So I think seeing more athlete and millennial Gen Z generated content that can reach not just US audiences, but global audiences, that will bode well, not just for the communications field, but also for sport globally as well.
I think just continuing to push like women's athletics, and I think March Madness was a great example of how it's changing. Like we're on ESPN, we're on the main channels, and we're getting the viewership that the men are getting. So I think just continuing that.
If not more.
Yeah, if not more.
If not more. So Bridget, we did not plan that, but that is a perfect ending for this. Thank you guys for your time. I know we covered a lot. There is time if you guys want to come up, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to answer questions. Thank you.